Hello all! Given that My Hero Academia is on break this week, as well as all of Shonen Jump, I decided I'd try my hand at a theory video, and who else to talk about but one of my favorite characters, Eri. She's of course pretty divisive in the community. Some love her because she's adorable and sweet, and some hate her because she's overpowered and they're dead inside. But today I want to talk about the character that she is most similar to, Shigaraki. Are you surprised? Well, you shouldn't have been. It was in the title card that I worked very hard on. But why do I think they're similar? Well, let's take a look at their backstory. They both developed an incredibly powerful quirk at a very young age, which ended up costing them their entire family. And then they were taken in by an incredibly evil person, and they begged for a hero's help. But for Eri, she got Vermilion and Deku, and Shigaraki got nobody. Instead, All For One came for him and twisted him into some horrible monster. Their quirks are also quite similar. While Eri can rewind time until someone is basically unborn, Shigaraki's quirk is called Decay, and even though it doesn't say this anywhere, I feel like it's almost a time acceleration quirk. He's literally reducing them to dust over countless years that he makes happen in a single second. Again, this has never been said in the community, but I feel like this might be how it's explained down the road, and it might be how he gets stronger. If he can slow down this process, he can accelerate time, say for example on the Nomu, to make them grow faster. Or if they ever want to redeem him, to make crops grow better. I know redemption seems a little out of left field for him, but we'll get back to that. Of course, it could also be looked at they are in fact opposites. I mean, consider their quirks again. Eri's undoes damage, undoes destruction. His does destruction, destroys and kills and damages all around it. Hers can happen in an area around her. His requires a direct touch. Hers requires a buildup of energy in her horn. His can be done anytime. And I think if these two are met in battle, assuming there are other people involved, like a team battle, you definitely want her to be on your side. Imagine Shigaraki just turning everybody to dust around you again and again, while Eri uses her quirk to undo the damage again and again, restoring them to health, restoring them to perfectness, you know? I think it'd make for a very interesting battle. I mean, maybe she couldn't restore them, from dust, but once the decay starts kicking in and their body starts falling apart, she could just, undo it, return them to a state before they started to decay. Obviously, Shigaraki would then target her, but let's assume he can't kill her for whatever reason. Either All For One wants her, or the doctor wants her, or they're just managing to keep her safe somehow. This, of course, would require to have a much better control on her quirk, which I don't see happening for a while. I also think that she may be the one who redeems Shigaraki in the end. I know this seems like a crazy thought. Shigaraki, the leader of the League of Villains, the main antagonist, getting redeemed, but I do think it's possible. This last chapter tried to paint the picture that if Toga had been raised in a better society, if she hadn't been warped and twisted by it, then she could have turned out a decent human being. Again, I had issues with that, but it's entirely possible she could have ended up not being a serial killer if she'd had better parents and the quirk counseling hadn't twisted her the way it had. And there's Dabi. I know that still hasn't been confirmed yet, but I think us in the community are fairly certain that he's Endeavor's son, Todoroki's brother. He's son of a hero, raised by a hero, and yet he turned out a horrible villain because of the trauma of his past, because of what his father did to him. And then Shigaraki himself, his grandmother, was one of the greatest heroes ever, and yet because of how he was raised, he ended up this twisted monstrosity. I feel like the series is almost emphasizing the fact that anybody can be a hero if they're willing to put in the work, if they're willing to try. And yet at the same time, anyone can become a villain if they're just dealt the wrong hand. They're just twisted in such a way. Anyone who's ever seen the Killing Joke or read the comic knows that Joker was a fairly ordinary man until one bad day twisted him into the monstrosity he was, and he was convinced that a bad day could do the same thing to anyone else. One bad day could turn anyone into him. He wasn't able to prove that at all, but he makes a good point. depending on the circumstance. A good person could end up a terrible monster, and a bad person could end up a great hero. I am personally convinced that if one or two things happened differently, Deku could have ended up joining the League of Villains. I already have a full theory written down on how that would work, so let me know in the comments down below if you want me to make a video on that, because I think it's a pretty interesting concept. But back to Shigaraki. How could he be redeemed? How could Eri possibly do that? Well, I have two different ideas, and I know one of them is going to be hated just because it's basically insane, but I do like the other one. And then there's a third one which kind of matches them with the other two, but let's just get into it. So you ever notice that Shigaraki's covered in hands? The perfectly preserved hands of his entire dead family? You ever wonder why that is? Because I have an idea. It's a crazy idea, but it's an idea. What if Eri is able to get a hold of one or more of the hands and is able to reverse it to a state where it becomes a fully fleshed out human being? Now the main issue with this is that it would turn her from an OP character into a god, but there are ways around this, you know. She could say it requires 2 years of charging for me to be able to do this. She could get hit with a quirk-killing bullet right after this. She might not be able to hold it together for more than a few minutes, then it'll just fall apart. But I think that seeing a member of his family come back to him and looking at him as the monster that he's become would really be a very powerful moment for Shigaraki, and I'd really love to see it. Now again, that might not actually turn him back into a good guy. In fact, there's a fairly likely chance he just end up killing this person that was brought back and just emphasizing that he hates the world and this is who he is now. Again, though, I would really love to see that. I think we could all admit that would be an amazingly awesome scene. The second way I could see this happening is if I think it's fairly safe to say that there is something going on with his memories. He said multiple times in the last few chapters that he didn't actually remember killing his family, just these random flashes, and that was enough for him to hate the world. It makes me wonder if All For One had a hand in this. If maybe he's the one that gave Shigaraki the decay quirk. If maybe he had a role in killing his family just so he could twist him and bring him over to the dark side so that he can have his revenge on All Might. I mean, if that is the case, it might be possible for Eri to somehow reverse the damage on his brain so that he remembers the truth, that he remembers that All For One was the one that killed his family. Again, that might not bring him over to the side of good, but it could very easily have him turn against All For One and at least temporarily team up with, the good guys, the heroes, so that he can get his revenge. He could end up becoming a villain again right after that, but it'd still be a very interesting scene, Deku and Shigaraki versus All For One. It's like Batman teaming up with the Joker. But then we're left with what to do with Shigaraki. Once this is all said and done, what is there to do with this man who has caused so much damage and destruction, but yet All Might will still want to reach, will still want to try and save? Well, what if we just made him a kid? I feel like this could be the ultimate use of Eri's quirk moving forward. What if once a villain has reached a certain point, what if they've committed so many crimes, Eri just comes in and reduces them to being a kid again, before the trauma that made them who they are, before they made their mistakes. I'm assuming they'll have to pass some certain test or whatnot, like they can't just be pure evil. Would have had to come from a good family, would have to have shown some goodness somewhere in their life to qualify for this, but just imagine it. This is the new world. The majority of the supervillains are reformed by returning them to an age before they made their first crime, before they were broken in such a way where they became villains. Just imagine that. Imagine a kid Shigaraki at the end of the series, Eri's age, sitting there with All Might as he helps raise the kid into a hero, someone who uses his quirk for good somehow. I mean, can you just imagine that for a second? That's how the series ends. Shigaraki's a kid again, and All Might is raising him, along with Deku and everyone else, trying to get him to turn out good this time. I mean, think Salim Bradley from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Once they got rid of the evil in him, they were fairly convinced they could raise him to be a good human child. Though, not really sure human is the right word there, but whatever. Eri and Shigaraki had such a similar backstory, and I really don't feel like that's an accident. I feel it's there to emphasize the different choices they could have made with both of them, and I really think we'll see that if these two ever meet. I mean, her quirk is literally OP, I can admit that, and I'm absolutely certain the Doctor, or All for One, are going to want to get their hands on her. Now, of course, Deku and Eraserhead and everybody are going to try their best to stop them, but I could certainly see them getting a hold of Eri, and I'm just very interested in how their interaction is going to be. Because, like I said, they've lived the same life. They know the same trauma. They know the same darkness. And it seems like Eri overcame it, while Shigaraki fell further and further into it. But could he have been saved? If they managed to return him to a kid, and if they raised him right, could he end up being a hero as well? It almost feels like that is the question the series is asking. Who becomes a hero? Who becomes a villain? What defines them? And is it possible for a hero to become a villain and a villain to become a hero? Well, let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Will these two ever meet? What will their interactions be like? Could Shigaraki become a hero? And let me know what you think of these theory videos. I've been wanting to do one for a while, I just haven't really had a chance yet. And I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to speculate on what might happen down the road. And if you liked it, be sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, peace.